Good evening, Zion Wayside. Good to be with you tonight as we continue our series through summer for our Wednesday night devotion, Summer in the Psalms. Tonight we'll be taking a look at Psalm 46, a psalm that you are very familiar with, especially members of the Lutheran Church, as this is known as Luther's Psalm. But we'll talk about why that is in a few minutes. But hope everybody's enjoying their summer so far. We've had a string of beautiful days, comfortable, not 100 degrees with humidity, but comfortable, nice weather. Hope everybody's enjoying their summer so far. So as I mentioned, we are going to continue our series working through the Psalms, and we are going to take a look at Psalm 46. And the reason that I wanted to look at this one today is because it kind of ties into where we've been in our sermons on Sundays as well. Remember, this previous Sunday, we've talked about good courage, courage versus fear, and walking by faith and not by sight. And if you missed that sermon, go ahead and find that video on our Facebook page as well. You can listen to that. That was from 2 Corinthians chapter 5. But this psalm is very similar to that and hits similar themes to that, speaking to our courage being based not in our own actions, but in that of God. So let's jump right in, and we'll take it section by section, looking at Psalm 46. So we don't want to ignore the headings in our Psalms. And this one says, to the choir master of the sons of Korah, according to Alamoth, a song. Now, do I know who these people are? Honestly, no, I don't. But it does tell us that this was a hymn that they sang. And as we read through it, you'll kind of see why this is thought. But it's thought that this is a hymn that was written after victory in battle. So as we read through this, you can kind of see how this might portray a victory of battle. Okay, so here we go. Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. And real quickly, so then we see this word at the end of each stanza. This is Salah, and really all that means is it's a Hebrew word that denotes a transition. It denotes the stop of singing. Now we're gonna transition to another stanza. That's all it is. So if you're ever reading at church, if you're ever reading out loud or at home, you don't have to read this. Okay, it's just a Hebrew marker is really all it is. So right away in verse 1, we get kind of the main theme, and we'll even see it becomes a refrain. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. And one of the things that I love about this site, this is Bible Gateway, is it puts these notes in here, these footnotes. A very present help in trouble, meaning he's here, right? He's present, he's here with us. But this Hebrew word for present can also mean well proved. So God is our refuge and strength, but a very well proved help in trouble. He's done things that proves that he is our refuge and strength. He's demonstrated that. We've seen that. We've had victory in battle. We've seen that God is keeping us safe. We've seen that he is the one that provides us strength. It is well proved that he is our help in trouble. Even when things go wrong, even though the mountains be moved and waters foams and the mountains tremble at its swelling, we will not fear. We will not fear because God has already proved that he is here for us. That's exactly what we talked about on Sunday. Even though bad things happen, even though we see, this is what Paul talked about, the temporary nature of our bodies, and we feel the circumstances that come with that. Even the temporary nature of the world, which is what the psalmist is talking about here, though the earth gives way, we don't fear because God is our refuge and strength, and He has already proved that in so many different ways, and continues to prove that in so many different ways. So we will not fear. Next stanza. There is a river whose stream makes glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter. He utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Kind of the same theme throughout the stanzas here. We hear this talk of a river. Perhaps we don't think of it like the people of Israel spoke of it, or how nations did back then, but and really how nations across the world still talk about it today. How crucially and vitally important water is, as a lot of the United States and these well-developed countries have water. You know, you can go to your kitchen and bathroom and turn on a faucet and you've got water right there. So maybe we take this for granted, but how significant that water, whose streams make glad the city. That is the psalmist speaking to God's goodness and how he provides his provisional attributes, just like the river provides life. We think of even our country and how our major cities were developed, put right there on a source of water, how incredibly important that was in all aspects of life. Um, that's what the psalmist is talking about here. The holy habitation of the Most High being centered in that river that makes glad the city of God. And there he is in the midst of her, and his city shall not be moved. But then again, even as we talk about that, the nations rage, the kingdoms totter, bad things continue to happen. There is turmoil, and yet, who is it that is truly in control? It's God. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come, behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth. He makes wars cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. So here we kind of directly see that this is a victorious hymn as he makes wars cease. But this is the line that stuck out to me, this very first line in verse 8. Come, behold the works of the Lord, and then tying that in with the end, be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. And he is exactly that. He is exalted because of what he has done, because of the works of the Lord. I think about many different stories in the Old Testament where the works of the Lord are known even from the foreign nations. You think about the Exodus and the story of how God brought his people out of Egypt, how Pharaoh had a hardened heart, and Moses came before him and said, "Let my people go," and he didn't. And yet God was still with his people. And we saw that displayed in miraculous and powerful ways through the plagues. People knew about that. And moving forward centuries, nations knew about that. You can turn in your Bible to 1 Samuel chapters 5, 6, and 7-ish. There's a story in there of how the Philistines were actually victorious over the Israelites and took the Ark of God to be in Philistia and traveled throughout the towns. And as they had the Ark, bad things began to happen to them. And so they had priests and diviners come and they asked, what's going on here? And they essentially said, what do you expect? We saw what God did to Pharaoh and to Egypt when their heart was hardened. We saw what the God of Israel is capable of doing, and you're experiencing that. And so what they do, they took the ark right back, right? But even those foreign priests, those foreign diviners knew what God was capable of doing. You think of the well-known story of the prophet of Jonah, as Jonah gets a call from God to go and preach to Nineveh, and he's not too keen on that call. And so he gets on a ship and he's fleeing to Tarshish. And what happens? A storm rages, and the members of this crew, who are not Israelites, they are foreigners, they have foreign gods. They ask Jonah, who are you? And Jonah says, I worship the God of Israel. And immediately those guys know it's because of you that this is happening. They know the works of the Lord and the power that he has. And through his power that he demonstrates, people do know that he is God and his name is exalted. And yet, those are all Old Testament examples. Since then, God has done the great work in giving us his son, Jesus. And that is the means by which his name will be known. Do we always honor that? Is that always the first thing that we fall back on? God is our refuge and strength. He is our fortress because of what he has done for us through the death and resurrection of Jesus. Is that always our first thing to fall back on? I think the answer is no. I think a lot of times we fall back on our own works, our own actions. A lot of the times we do resort to fear and we tremble when these sorts of things start to happen. Behold the works of the Lord. What an awesome line. Know what God has done, namely for us, the church today, and most importantly, know what God has done for us. Know the works of God through Jesus, his one and only Son, through his death and resurrection. Know about the forgiveness that comes through that. Know about the life that comes through that. And what is there left to fear? Truly, in that act, we see that God is our fortress. And that is why this is called Luther's Psalm. And so to close, perhaps you're already thinking of this. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Where do we hear familiar lines like that? This hymn, a mighty fortress is our God. So Luther wrote this hymn, and we sing it a lot, most specifically on Reformation Sunday and Confirmation Sunday, I believe we do as well. A mighty fortress. It's a direct quote from Psalm 46. And it shares the same theme too. Remember, the psalmist talks about God and how he is our fortress, and yet bad things happen. He talks about that in every single verse. The old evil foe now means deadly woe. That doesn't go away here on earth, but God is still our fortress. We can't do anything about this, but for us fights the valiant one, and that is Jesus. So Luther takes Psalm 46 and does exactly what we just talked about, brings Jesus into it and sees how Jesus is that power of God, that act of God displayed in its greatest form. And the same thing, though devils all the world shall fill, all eager to devour us, we tremble not, we fear no ill. For God is with us. He can harm us none. The deed is done. What Jesus accomplished on the cross and through the empty tomb, it's done. It's over. Battle's over. And this is I think the most powerful line here, a line that perhaps you have memorized, a line I have memorized. And they take our life, good, fame, child, wife, though these things all be gone, what's the result? Our victory has been won. The kingdom ours remaineth. It's God is our fortress. God is our refuge. God is our strength, and nothing can change that. And that's what Psalm 46 is all about. Though we see the things that happen in our world, nothing can change the fact that God is our strength, that the works of the Lord are mighty, and his name will be exalted because he said so. And that is the truth, and his name will be exalted by his Spirit. And that's what we are called to do. And that's what we're going to talk about this Sunday in our worship and our sermon as well, as his name will be exalted. And we are a big part of that as we are ambassadors for Christ, ambassadors for God. So that is Psalm 46, known as Luther's Psalm, the psalm in which a mighty fortress was based upon, a psalm of victory, a psalm of peace, a psalm of comfort, that God truly is our refuge and strength. So blessings to you this night, and we will see you on Sunday.